Alright guys, we are on a roll. So we are just going to keep on rolling and we're going to read chapter 17, Recovering the Key. Okay, so they're going to try and get up those stairs and go through the brownie doors and get the key, the artifact key. Do you guys think that they're going to be able to make it or not make it? I don't know. Let's see. Kendra held Seth's hand as they raced along the hall. At their current size, the corridor felt as wide as a ballroom. Seth's speed began to flag as they reached the end of the hall where they needed to turn left. The glove gets heavier and heavier, Seth panted. Let me take it for a while, Kath. I can't read. Too many chapters in one day. Let me take it for a while, Kendra offered. He handed it over with no protest. The glove was not terribly heavy, but it was hard to hold, trying to carry a couple of unrolled sleeping bags. Burdened by the glove, she hurried as best she could. I wish I had infrared vision like you, Seth said. Infrared? Or ultraviolet, whatever it is. Is normal light too bright for you now? No, it's the same as ever. Can we talk later? I'm kind of running out of wind. They trotted along in silence. The hall seemed endless. Kendra's heart was hammering, and sweat was drenching her silky clothes, making them feel slimy. The bulky glove flopped around as she ran. I have to walk for a minute, Kendra finally gasped. They slowed their jog to a walk. I can take the glove back, Seth said. Kendra handed it over. I still need to walk just a little, Kendra said. Hey, I see our last turn up ahead. Still a pretty good way to the door, and then the stairs after that, Seth reminded her. I know, I'll be good in a second. Sorry to slow you down. Are you kidding? I'm tired too. And you carried the glove a long way. They walked in silence until they reached the hall where they needed to turn right. Should we run again? Kendra asked. We better, Seth said. Kendra was reminded of running laps around the field with the soccer team. She was naturally a pretty good runner, but with those first few practices, they had already tested her. She had almost thrown up a couple of times during the first week. She could run through the stitches in her side and the burning of muscles, but once she became nauseated, like feeling like she was going to throw up, her willpower to run faded fast. She had been at the point when she asked Seth to stop, and she could feel the unwelcome sensation returning. She tried to ignore the dank smell of the dungeon. The humid stench alone was enough to make her queasy. She reminded herself that Seth was carrying the glove and doing just fine. The taste of bile rose in her throat like she felt like she was going to throw up. She fought to choke back the sensation until she involuntarily flopped forward, hands slapping the stone floor, and dry heaved. That's sick, Kendra, Seth said. Keep going, she gasped. Nothing had come up, but she had a foul taste in her mouth. She wiped her lips on her sleeve. I think we should stay together, he said. You'll get a big fist, she said. Or you'll get big first, she said. I'll catch up. Kendra, I can't see. I can't run without you. Maybe if you let loose and yak, you'll feel better. Kendra shook her head and stood up. Oh, I hate puking. I'm already feeling a little bit better. We can walk for a minute, he said. Just for a minute, she replied. Before long, Kendra was feeling much more steady. She picked up the pace, not charging as hard as before, trying to conserve energy. I see the door up ahead, she finally said. The tall iron door loomed into view. Kendra led Seth to the small opening in the bottom of the door. They passed through the brownie entrance and hustled toward the stairs. Do you see the hole Grandma was talking about? Seth asked. Yes, it's off to the left. It's small and it looks like a mouse hole. She led Seth to the hole in the wall near the first step. She had not remembered how steep and numerous the stairs were from the basement to the kitchen. They would barely be able to reach the top of each step. With the gloves, scaling the stairs would have taken hours. Kendra and Seth wiggled through the hole. Inside, they found a brownie tunnel, like the one they had followed to get into the dungeon, except that it was a stairway entirely of stone. The stairs were steep, but just the right size for brownies. They started scaling the long staircase, 2 steps at a time. Kendra's legs soon felt rubbery. Can we rest for a second? They paused, both of them breathing hard. Uh-oh, Seth said after a moment. What? Kendra said, looking around, worried he'd seen her out. I'm starting to tingle, he said. Ah, give me the glove and run, Kendra said. He handed it off and bolted up the stairs. Kendra followed, finding new energy in her desperation. He was 10 steps ahead, then 20, then 30. Soon he was out of view. Before long, she could see where the steps ended. There was a little extra light filtering in through the door from the kitchen. She reached the top of the long staircase and crammed the glove through the hole ahead of her. Then she squirmed through the hole. Kendra, the glove! Seth hissed from beyond the brownie door. His voice was pitched lower again. She raced to the little door, dragging the glove, and lunged through into the kitchen. Kendra was almost back to his normal size. The clothes the brownies had made lay in tatters. Oh, they got tattered when he got big. Kendra heard footsteps coming towards them from around the corner. Seth's face was a mask of panic as he snatched the glove and hastily tugged it on, vanishing instantly. Flashing back into view, he picked up Kendra, and then she disappeared as well. They both flickered briefly back into view as Seth grabbed the remnants of the clothes the brownies had made. Then he held still and became transparent. A second later, Vanessa rounded the corner and looked right through them. "Did you hear something?" she asked uncertainly. "Of course not, love," a male voice answered from around the corner. "You've been hearing things all day. The imps are on guard. All is well." Kendra recognized the voice. It was Errol. Remember Errol that had gotten rid of that Colby kid at the beginning that was actually the goblin? Him. That guy. Vanessa frowned slightly. "I suppose I have been on edge." She walked back out of sight. Kendra realized that she'd been holding her breath. It made her feel lightheaded. She started breathing again, as controlled as she could. Seth grabbed a large green dish towel off the counter and wrapped it around his waist. Suddenly, Kendra started tingling. She slapped Seth's hand. He held her up to his ear. "I'm tingling," she whispered. He tiptoed away from the door. Vanessa had walked towards the dining room, so he went in the opposite direction. As they entered the living room, Kendra felt the tingling spreading and intensified. "Won't be long," she warned. He stuck her behind a sofa. As soon as she was out of view, she started pulling off the dress, which was feeling tight. After a couple of moments, the tingling became severe, and she felt herself growing. Before she knew it, she was back to her normal size, her body pushing the sofa away from the wall, the unbearable tingle subsiding. Seth straightened the sofa, and Kendra peeked her head out. "If you hold still, will I turn invisible too?" Seth grabbed her hand and held still. He became invisible, but she did not. "Must only work for small stuff," he said. "Try to find me some clothes," she whispered. Voices and footsteps were approaching. Seth hushed her, moved to the side of the sofa, and held still. Errol came striding into the room wearing the same antiquated suit Kendra and Seth had become familiar with. "A minor setback," he remarked over his shoulder. "Why not just send Dale?" Vanessa followed him into the room. "We're running out of people. Our job here is far from complete. We must conserve. Tanu is a major loss. He was as strong as a bull." Kendra bit her lip. What had happened to Tanu? Errol crossed the room and flung himself down on the sofa, kicking off his shoes. "At least now we know what we're up against," he said. "We should have known last time," Vanessa said. "Kendra awoke me just at the wrong moment, right before I glimpsed what was coming." Many creatures radiate fear. The feeling was so strong I suspected a demon, and of course I missed seeing what happened to Seth. "You're sure he's alive?" Errol said. "I'm sure I felt him," Vanessa said, "but I couldn't take possession of him. He was slippery, protected somehow. It was like nothing I'd ever felt." Errol laced his hands around his neck. "Sure he isn't just a mindless albino?" Vanessa shook her head. "No, after Coulter and Tanu were attacked by the Revenant, I lost all contact. It's as if Seth found some kind of shielded area. But there was no escape. You saw enough to know that." "Yeah, which is why I'm perplexed," she said. "I know what I felt." "You haven't sensed him since this morning?" "True. He could be free, he could be dead, though dead would be a reckless assumption. My instincts tell me that something unforeseeable has happened." "Are you sure you don't want to send the imps out hunting for him and Kendra?" Errol asked. "Not yet," Vanessa said. "Once the imps pass out of the yard, they will not be able to return. If we find the register, that would change things, but we mustn't take unnecessary risks. There's too much at stake. I want the imps on guard until we resolve how to handle a revenant. Kendra will surely return to try to help her grandparents. If we are patient and keep careful watch, she will come to us. And if not, she will have to sleep before long." Kendra fought the urge to leap to her feet and shout at Vanessa. She reminded herself that getting caught would only make matters worse, no matter how satisfying an angry tirade might feel. Not to mention the awkward fact that she had no clothes on. "You're sure she won't meet up with Hugo?" Errol said. "I sent Hugo to the farthest corner of Fablehaven with strict instructions to wait there for at least 2 weeks. The golem is out of the picture." "Yet the problem with the Revenant remains," Errol mused. "We know the location. We have the key. We just need to get past the undead guardian," she said. "Along with whatever traps protect the tower itself," Errol added. "Naturally," she agreed, "which is part of the reason I would hate to waste Dale on the Revenant as well. I would like to use him to explore the tower." Errol sat up. "Then send Stan or Ruth." "Or when Kendra falls asleep, I could also send her," Vanessa said. "But I don't want to send anyone until we have a strategy to remove the nail." "Can't you just divorce yourself from the situation?" Errol said. "Just focus on the consoling fact that you are not actually in the grove, that you're just using someone else as a puppet." Yeah, you would have to sample the fear to understand, she said. It is overwhelming and irrational. It left me utterly paralyzed both times. There is no room for creating intellectual distance. All I intended to do when I was inhabiting Tanu was to get a look at the creature and then run away. But I lost all bodily control. It poses quite a problem. Perhaps it would do us good to sleep on it, he said. That may be your best idea of the evening, Vanessa said. Errol got to his feet. All he had to do was notice that the sofa was pushed a little farther away from the wall than usual, look behind it, and he could see Kendra lying there, utterly exposed. He picked up his shoes. Not 5 feet away, the invisible presence of Seth remained dutifully motionless. Kendra heard somebody else entering the room. Still no sign of activity, a raspy voice reported. It had to be one of the imps. Keep a sharp lookout, Cricket, Vanessa said. I would not be surprised if Kendra tried to slip into the house under the cover of darkness. Kendra could hear Cricket sniffing. There stinkers everywhere, he said. If I didn't know better, I'd say they were right here in this room, the girl and her brother. Yeah, they'd have to have been. Or they have been, for days on end, Errol said. Don't forget the scent. Keep your nostrils open. Kendra will be getting sleepy and desperate by now. That will be all, Cricket, Vanessa said. We are going to turn in and tell Harrow and Zert to raise the alarm at any sign of either children. Otherwise, you can refrain from reporting until sunrise. Very well, Cricket said. Kendra heard him leaving. Vanessa and Errol were walking away as well. Really is a fine house, Errol remarked. I rather enjoy lounging in Stan's bed. Kendra could hear them climbing the stairs. The shorter our stay, the better, Vanessa said. Keep alert. We'll finalize our plans in the morning. Kendra waited quietly, listening to the sounds of Vanessa and Errol moving around on the floor above. She heard a toilet flush and then the sound of water running in a sink. We just need to be patient, Seth whispered. Yeah, Kendra said. Wait for them to settle down. You think Errol is Christopher Vogel? Seth asked. If they haven't found the register yet, that seems like the only explanation, she said. It must be his real name. I'll be right back, Seth said. Before she could protest, he was creeping away. He returned shortly, wearing Grandpa's white bathrobe. He tossed a sheet over the back of the couch, and Kendra wrapped herself in it. These were in the study, he whispered. The cot is still a mess. No one will miss the sheet, even if they look. Back in a sec. Seth exited the room again. He did not return for a few minutes. When he finally came back, he said, I checked out the windows. The 2 imps on the back porch. There are 2 imps on the back porch and a big fat one out front. The sides of the house look unguarded. If you slip out through the study window, you might be able to sneak into the woods. We should wait and make a break for it together, she said. Nobody is going to look behind the couch for now, and when you steal the keys. How long do you think we should wait? He asked. Longer than you think, Kendra said. The clock on the wall says 10:47. I say we wait a full hour before you go upstairs, just to be safe. In that case, I'm going to make a sandwich. No way, Kendra said firmly. All I've eaten for 2 days is cocoon pulp, he said. You had snacks at Warren's, she reminded him. Right, snacks. I wasn't that hungry then. Now I feel like my stomach is digesting itself. If they hear you rustling around, we could all die. There's plenty of food in the cabin. I say wait. Yeah, what if they end up catching us? Seth said. Then we'll be stuck eating glop. Did you smell that stuff? If we get caught, we're going to have bigger problems than glop, Kendra said. I bet I can make a sandwich about 10 times quieter than you are whispering, he accused. Are you trying to make me angry? Are you trying to make me hungry? Fine, Kendra said. Go make a sandwich. We've got an hour. Maybe you can bake a cake and some cupcakes, too. I've got a better idea. I'll make a smoothies in the blender with lots of ice. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Fine, you know what? You and Kendra. I'll sit here and starve. Good. Starve quietly. Time crawled along. Seth spent most of the hour sitting invisibly on the couch. Kendra tried to picture what escape route she could use if things went bad. Eventually the hour passed. Can I go get the keys? Seth asked. Do we need more of a plan? Kendra said. My plan is to be really quiet and bring the keys downstairs, Seth said. And then only one of us should go to the basement, so at least one of us can get away, she said. We don't want to both get trapped down there. Okay, what if somebody wakes up and sees me? Seth said. Run for it, Kendra said. I'll play it by ear. Just because they see you doesn't mean they know I'm in the house. Maybe if I can lie low and save the day after things settle down. Or maybe somebody else will save the day for a change, Seth said. Besides, if they find me, I'll bet they'll search the house. And what's the best hiding place on the floor? If I were you, I'd hide in the study like behind the desk. You'll have quick access to a window that will take you outside. Going out through the side should give you a chance to avoid the imps. If they catch me, you should probably take off. Maybe you can leave the preserve and try to find the Sphinx. We'll see, Kendra said. Wish me luck. Hopefully my growling stomach won't give me away. Wrapped in her sheet, Kendra walked to the entry hall with her brother. As he started to climb the stairs, staying close to the wall and treading lightly, she went to the study. She unlocked the window and squatted behind the desk. She noticed a letter opener on top of a pile of papers. She picked it up. It felt comforting to have some sort of weapon in her grasp. All she could do now was wait. Maybe she should be the one wearing the glove and creeping into Vanessa's room. Seth would never have let her, since sneaking around was more of his specialty, but it was an awful lot of responsibility to give someone who liked sticking french fries in his nose. At the top of the stairs, Seth moved stealthily down the hall to Vanessa's room. A light had been left on in the bathroom, so the hall was fairly bright. The door to Vanessa's room was closed. There was no light shining underneath it. Cupping his ear against the door, he waited invisibly, but heard nothing. Gently he turned the knob. It made a faint creaking sound, and he paused. After several slow breaths, he turned the knob the rest of the way and eased the door open. The room was darker and more shadowy than the hall, but he could still see fairly well. Vanessa was lying on her side on the bed beneath her sheets. The blankets were folded at the foot of the bed. Containers full of strange animals were everywhere. Seth took a slow step towards her. A low croak disturbed the silence. Seth froze, turning invisible. Vanessa did not stir. Apparently she was accustomed to animal sounds in the night. That should work in his favor. Her bed was on the far side of the room. He decided that instead of crossing the center of the room, he would work his way along the perimeter, like the outside. That way, if she woke up, there would be less chance of her accidentally bumping into him. Seth crept along the edge of the room, taking small, quiet steps. The sheet did not cover Vanessa's shoulders, so he could see that she had not changed out of her clothes. Staring at her, he had a hard time picturing her as a traitor. She was so pretty, her dark hair spilling over the pillow. Seth glimpsed a metal pole under her chin. It had to be the artifact key. She was sleeping right on top of it. A bird chirped and he halted, watching the narcoleptic intently. Satisfied that she remained asleep, he worked his way along the wall, passing numerous cages. Vanessa was facing him. All she needed to do was open her eyes while he was moving, and all would be lost. Finally, he reached the nightstand beside her. Her blowgun lay on the nightstand, along with 3 small darts. What if he picked up a dart and pricked her? Did narcoleptics have immunity to sleeping potions? It wasn't worth the risk. But he picked up a tiny dart anyway for backup. Another step closer, and he was standing over Vanessa. If she stretched out her hand, she could touch him. If he reached out his hand, he could touch her. There was no way he could get to the artifact gear. She was partly on top of it. He would have to wait for her to shift positions. While he waited, he scanned the room for the dungeon keys. There were many surfaces where they could be resting, on top of cages or terrariums, as well as on tables or dressers. He did not see them anywhere. They could be in her pocket or tucked away in a secret spot, or Arrow might have them. Vanessa continued to breathe evenly, showing no sign that she would ever change positions. Maybe narcoleptics were really deep sleepers. She might not move all night. There was simply no possible way that he could slide the long key out from underneath her without waking her up. Most of it was under the sheet with her. Seth noticed a box of tissues on the nightstand. He removed a tissue. It made a slight sound as he pulled it from the box, but Vanessa did not twitch. Seth stared at the tissue, but it vanished along with the rest of him as he held still. Wriggling his hand, he stared at the tissue, figuring out the best way to let it hang. This would be risky. He might very well wake Vanessa up, but he had to make her shift positions. She showed no sign of budging on her own. Leaning forward, Seth moved the dangling tissue towards her face. Slowly but surely it came closer, until a corner of the tissue brushed her nose. Vanessa smacked her lips and scratched her face. Seth jerked his hand away and held still. Vanessa twisted her head back and forth, hummed softly, and then her regular breathing resumed. She did not alter her position. The key remained mostly beneath her. Seth waited for a long time. Then he leaned forward to the tissue again and let it gently brush her nose. Vanessa snatched the tissue and her eyes opened suddenly. She had been waiting for it this time. Seth froze, his invisible hand less than a foot from her face. She glanced at the tissue, squinting in Seth's direction. That's my son waking up from the morning. She glanced at the tissue, squinted in Seth's direction, then turned her head the other way. When she looked away, Seth jerked his hand back, flickering momentarily into view. Fortunately, her eyes were not on him. It reminded him of playing red light, green light when he was younger. He and Kendra had to sneak up on their dad while his back was to them. If he caught them moving when he turned around, they got sent back to the start. The stakes were higher, but the game was the same. Vanessa sat up. "Who's there?" she said, eyes darting around the room. She looked straight through Seth several times. "Errol!" she called loudly, reaching for her blowgun. On the way to her blowgun, the side of her arm brushed against Seth. She yanked her hand back. "Errol!" she yelled, kicking the sheets off of her. Striking quickly, Seth jabbed the tiny dart he was holding into her arm. Her eyes widened in surprise when he flashed into view, but she had no time to react. She had been rising out of bed, but instead she hesitated, lips compressed, and then collapsed heavily to the floor. Seth grabbed the long key off the bed. It was quite heavy and several inches taller than him. He was glad to see that it disappeared along with him when he held still. Seth could hear Errol thumping down the hall. He leapt away from the bed and stood still as Errol raced through the doorway and saw Vanessa on the floor. "Intruder!" Errol shouted. Seth realized that Errol would probably suspect he had already fled, so he held perfectly still. Errol briefly surveyed the room, then ran out into the hall. Seth heard the front door open downstairs, followed by heavy footfalls on the stairs. Would the imp smell him? What should he do? He heard a door downstairs slam shut. The imps on the stairs grunted urgently. Seth heard Errol dashing through the hall. "In the study!" he shouted. "Bring the intruder to me!" Seth heard Errol racing down the stairs. Kendra had created a diversion, but now she would have everybody right on her heels, and Seth did not like her chances. Leaning the key by the door, he picked up a terrarium full of blue salamanders and ran down the hall. He could hear them ramming the door to the study. From the top of the stairs, Seth heaved the terrarium over the banister into the entry hall. He did not stay to watch it hit the floor, but he heard the glass shattering like a bomb and Errol shouting. Seth hastily retreated to Vanessa's room. Picking up the key, he crossed the room, unlocked the window, and threw it open. Vanessa's room was high above the back porch. Seth dove through the window onto the roof of the porch. He could only hope that the commotion had already brought the imps stationed on the back porch into the house. Otherwise, he was about to be caught. He closed the window, hoping his pursuers might not be sure where he had gone. For all they knew, he could have retreated to any of the rooms or even gone to the attic. He heard Kendra screaming for Mendingo from the side of the house. She sounded desperate. Seth hurried to the edge of the porch roof. The porch was raised above the level of the yard, so even the lowest part of the porch roof was a good 10 feet above the ground. Seth tossed the key onto the grass. Then he found a portion of the roof that stuck out over a thick bush. Turning and crouching, he grabbed the lip of the roof and stepped off, hoping to dangle before dropping. The weight of his body was too much, and he lost his grip, falling awkwardly on his side but landing on the bush. Hitting the bush sideways turned out to be a lucky way to fall. He smashed the bush down and absorbed the brunt of the impact. Shaking, heart racing, Seth rolled out of the bush, picked up the key, and sprinted for the woods, his oversized bathrobe flapping behind him. Now this is what was happening with Kendra during that time. After waiting in tense silence, Kendra knew that they were in trouble, and Vanessa started calling for Errol. She opened the window so that she would be ready for a quick exit. Then Errol yelled about an intruder, and she realized Seth had not been caught. She heard the front door open and the imp charge up the stairs. She had to create a distraction. Kendra ran to the study door, opened it, and banged it shut. She locked it and rushed to the window, wishing that she had more to wear than a sheet. She pushed her legs out first, so she was sitting on the windowsill, then turned around and bolstered herself backwards. Her bare feet sank into the rich, soft soil of the flower bed. She dropped the letter opener in the process. Through the window, she could hear someone beating on the study door. Wood splintered as the door was rammed with greater force. Not bothering to look for the letter opener, Kendra started running across the grass towards the woods. She heard a tremendous crash behind her from inside the house, like a huge vase shattering. Glancing back, she still saw nobody in the study window, so she heard the terrarium crash to the ground that Seth had done. On the manicured lawn, her bare feet did not impede her speed. In fact, she was pretty sure that this was the fastest she had ever run, energized by sheer terror. In the woods, it would be another story. She heard something growl behind her. Looking back, she saw a thin, wiry imp in pursuit, having apparently just come through the window. She was about halfway across the yard to the woods, but the imp was running fast. "Mendingo!" Kendra screamed. "Meet me in the woods and protect me from the imps! Mendingo, hurry!" Off to her left, Kendra noticed the mellow glow of some fairies bobbing and weaving in a colorful cluster. "Fairies, please stop the imp!" Kendra called. The fairies stopped moving as if they were now watching, but did not come to her aid. At the fringe of the yard, a few paces from the woods, Kendra glanced back. The wiry imp had gained, but remained 20 paces behind her. Behind the wiry imp, Kendra saw an extremely fat imp scrambling through the window. He barely fit, then fell headfirst onto the flower bed. Facing forward, Kendra dashed into the outskirts of the woods. "Mendingo!" she cried again. Sharp rocks and sticks jabbed at her bare feet. She crunched through leaves and undergrowth. In some places the ground was squishy. She heard the imps closing in behind her, snapping twigs and tromping through brushes. Then she heard a rustling from off to one side. The wiry imp was now only about 5 paces behind her. Kendra had no hope of outrunning him. She heard footfalls from the same direction she had heard the rustling, only nearer now. Some nearby bushes parted, and Mendingo appeared. A bundle hit Kendra in the chest, and it took her a moment to realize that it was her and Seth's clothes, along with Tammy's pouch. Mendingo took flight, launching himself in a flying tackle that leveled the thin imp just a couple of paces from Kendra. They tussled on the ground. "Mendingo, stop the imp," Kendra said, "but don't kill him." Looking back towards the yard, Kendra could see that the lumbering, obese imp had almost reached the trees. Mendingo had wrapped the wiry imp in what looked like a complex wrestling hold. Clutching the bundle of clothes, Kendra tried to decide what her next move was. What would happen when the fat imp reached them? He was much bigger than the wiry imp. Maybe she could outrun him. He was certainly slower. Neither was the same imp that Kendra had seen in the dungeon. Of the three, the imp in the dungeon was the most muscular and looked the most dangerous. Something else was crashing towards her from the woods, from the opposite direction Mendingo had come. After a moment, she saw that something was wearing a bathrobe. "Seth!" she cried. He was carrying a metal staff that had to be the artifact key. He looked at Mendingo wrestling on the ground and then at the rapidly approaching fast imp. "Mendingo!" Seth ordered. "Break his arms!" "What?" Kendra said. "We have to stop them somehow," Kendra said. Mendingo shifted his grip, placed a wooden knee against the wiry imp's back, and then wrenched one of the imp's arms into an awkward position, and it jerked briskly. Kendra looked away, but heard the hideous snap. Oh, the imp howled. A second crunch followed. Oh! "Mendingo," Seth said, "break his legs and do the same to the other imp." Ah! Kendra heard more disgusting sounds. She opened her eyes. The wiry imp was writhing on the ground, limbs askew, and the fat imp had almost reached them, plowing through the undergrowth. Mendingo rushed to meet the fat imp. The oversized puppet dodged a punch and flung himself at the creature. The fat imp caught Mendingo up in the air and hurled him aside. Up close, Kendra realized that this imp was not only much broader and thicker than the other imp, he was at least a head taller. Mendingo, scuttling on all fours, dove at the imp's legs, trying to trip him. But the imp stomped at him and seized Mendingo and slammed him into a tree. One of the puppet's arms became unhinged and spun to the ground. Seth, who had been invisible, suddenly appeared and bashed the imp in the side of the head with the key. The huge imp staggered sideways and dropped to his knees, releasing Mendingo. The puppet hastily retrieved his arm, and then the massive imp turned and rose, wheezing, rubbing the side of his head, and glaring with furious eyes. Seth held still, invisible once more. "Mendingo," Seth said, "use this key to hurt the big imp." Seth flashed into view as he tossed the metal staff to Mendingo. The imp rushed at Seth, but Mendingo sprang into action, swinging the key with much more force than Seth had been able to muster. The imp raised an arm to block the blow, but his forearm buckled on impact. Whirling, Mendingo clubbed the imp's bulging belly, then whacked him across the shoulders, and he doubled over. "Mendingo," Seth said, "break his legs, but don't kill him." The puppet set about bludgeoning the falling imp, quickly hobbling him. "That's enough, Mendingo," Kendra said. "Only hurt them more if they keep after us." "You're gonna pay for this," the wiry imp snarled through clenched teeth, glaring fiercely at Kendra. "You asked for it," Kendra said. "Mendingo, pick us up and get us away from the yard as fast as you can." "And don't lose the key," Seth said. Mendingo hoisted Kendra over one shoulder and slung Seth over the other. The puppet ran away from the scene faster than either Kendra or Seth had seen him run before. "Mendingo," Kendra said softly, as they left the crippled imps behind, "take us back to the cottage as quickly as you can." "Did you say the cottage?" Seth asked. "There's another imp, and he looked like the worst of the three," Kendra said. "Right, but won't they look at the cottage?" Seth asked. "Imps can't enter the cottage," Kendra reminded him. "All right," Seth said. "I knocked Vanessa out with one of her own darts. Then they probably won't be right after us. Mendingo, if somebody chases us and gets close, put them down and beat them with the key." Mendingo showed no sign that he heard, but Kendra felt sure he had. He continued at a tireless pace. She did not mind the branches whipping past her and tearing at her feet. Or her sheet. It was much preferable to running barefoot. Ah, ew! That was kind of violent. It was kind of a violent chapter of imps getting bludgeoned, but, I mean, they're in a desperate situation.